Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast with me, Bryce Bauer. I've got a pretty complex topic today that I will try to unpack as best I can, and that is manipulation versus influence. I think it's fair to say that no one wants to be manipulated. Manipulation is inherently unethical because it involves using psychological tactics like guilt tripping or data manipulation, lying. And even though we could make a semantic argument for times that manipulation is neutral, for the sake of this argument, let's just use the clean definition. The most obvious reason why we don't want to be manipulated is because our ability to make decisions about what we need and what we want really dictate the quality of our life. If someone or an organization can come in and convince us to do things we don't really want to do, that can screw us up. We may lose the ability to trust ourselves, and it could also cause us to do things that are harmful to ourselves or others. So it's really important that we can make decisions for ourselves and trust our gut. However, the problem that we run into as humans in this world are that there are a lot of people, consciously or unconsciously, trying to get our attention, get us on their side, sell us things, and convince us of things because it benefits them. And there's a lot of gray area here. We don't always know what someone else's motives are. For instance, if you go into a used car dealership, you know that the salesman is incentivized to sell you a car, but you can't actually know what they know. They may be really ethical. They know they have a good car that fits in your budget, and they're genuinely trying to help make the deal happen. But it could also be true that they know there's something wrong with the car and they're more focused on making money for themselves, so they don't tell you that. I tend to believe that most people are trustworthy enough to not lie directly to your face. But the point is that we have to be on guard on some level. We have to have street smarts so that we don't get scammed or taken advantage of. There's also a reality that some people are just more trusting than others based on their history, their personality, their knowledge in a particular subject. But no matter what, every person on this earth is vulnerable to being manipulated in some way. That's just how it is. I consider myself to be pretty street smart. I'm also pretty skeptical generally. It doesn't always serve me, but I am. And I've still gotten ripped off. Last year, we had a leak in our tub that was coming down into our kitchen. And Jenny told me that she had a referral from someone else that there was this guy, a handyman, that could come fix it. I called him. He came right over that day. He basically told me what he had to do. Sometimes I'm curious to learn, so I watched him for a good portion of it. He showed me the problem. He told me how he's going to fix it. It was done. It seemed like a fair price. A couple weeks later, it starts leaking again. I reach out to him. He starts giving me excuses, and then he disappears. I'm not one to sit around and wait. So I call somebody else. They come over, cut open the wall again. And they're like, oh man, it doesn't look like he knew what he was doing. He stripped this, it's still leaking. And basically, I had to pay someone to come in and do the job right and fix what he fucked up. You've probably had similar situations in your life. There's a few bad apples out there. And for me, this was pretty easy to get over. But when we're talking about our closest relationship, your partner, your wife, when you two are both trying to get your needs met, if there appears to be a conflict in what you're both wanting, sometimes time might be ticking and you have to come to a decision together. This process of figuring out what's what here can become really confusing and scary. You can hit gridlock, feel angry, build resentment, cause emotional damage to each other in the process as you're trying to figure out what you're okay with and what you're not. Is this manipulation? Or is this just influence? And the way that I describe influence is reasoned arguments or emotional appeal to move someone to a beneficial action. So a real classic example of where one person might think they're being manipulated and others think that they're trying to influence them for their own good is in the case of an intervention. You have one person in the family that's abusing drugs or alcohol, and they might literally believe that everything is fine. or that they can fix it on their own. The family has a different perspective. They see more risk, they take into account past consequences, and so they come to the conclusion that they want to get help for their family member. I'm using this example because I used to work for adult treatment centers, and most of the clients tended to feel like they were manipulated into coming to treatment. Maybe their wife said they would divorce them, their kids wouldn't talk to them anymore, their parents were going to cut them off. They felt like they were being guilt tripped, but an informed perspective would say that they just had a family that loved them and wasn't willing to tolerate watching them hurt themselves anymore, and they weren't going to enable that. It is a brave move to stand up to your family member in this way. I'm telling you this story because I want to give you an idea of how to assess the difference between manipulation and influence. The first thing to think about if you and your partner are in a disagreement, you want different things, or one of you doesn't know, is to think about what the goal is for each of you. If your partner's wanting you to get help with your mental health, the goal is for you to get healthier and for the relationship to get healthier. So even if you feel like you're being manipulated, that doesn't mean it's true. As men, sometimes we have to swallow our pride, drop the ego, and get really honest with ourselves. Am I taking the easy road by calling this manipulation? Or am I scared to do what's being asked of me because it's confronting? Most of what couples argue about is the way that they're being with each other. It's how we're relating to it. It's how we're talking about it, how we're being treated. Ignoring a request or completely shutting it down is much different than saying, hey, let me sit with this one. I want to think about the options. I'm feeling fear, and then I'll circle back so we can talk about it. You may still end up saying that this isn't going to work for you, or you'll offer up another idea, but it's going to feel way better for her if you stay relational. And here's the really ironic thing. This is a trap that a lot of men, in my experience, get caught up in, is that the more that you dismiss, ignore, invalidate your partner on their needs, the more anxious they're going to become. And one of the strategies that people use when they're really anxious is that they can become more controlling. It comes across as more controlling. So you might be accidentally inviting in the very thing you don't want. Sometimes men come in to see me and they'll describe the current behavior and tone of their partner. And it's real. That's what's happening right then. But when we look at the history of how they've talked about difficult things or not talked about difficult things, I have to tell them that it's possible that the way that they've been dealing with this is really increasing the desperation, the anxiety, the feeling of loss of control on their partner side. That can be harder for them to see. The second thing I'd want you to check in with is this reasonable? Really try to step into their shoes and be objective. Is what's being asked of me doable, measurable, and in line with our values? If your wife is saying she wants you to work as much as possible so that you guys can have enough money for her to sit on the couch and watch TikTok all day and buy things on Amazon, that's not reasonable, right? If she's asking you to be softer with the kids, to get more vulnerable, to work on your anger, to quit drinking, those requests are all in line with better mental and physical health. Those things will benefit the relationship. And if you're having trouble deciding if it's reasonable, there are professionals that can help in just the same way that you deal with your car. If you don't know what's going on with it, but you know something's probably wrong, you want to get it assessed and hear what the options are. In my experience, men are so conditioned to be in charge all the time that even small amounts of influence can feel like manipulation. And so even though we want to trust that gut sense, we also need help to really understand the truth. If you can honestly say that you chose a good woman to partner with, she's probably not trying to manipulate you. Again, get clear on what the request is so that you can understand the goal, and then ask yourself, is this reasonable? Does this fit within my value system? I'm going to go out on a limb because I've done this dance with my wife many times and say that the thing that you might think is manipulation is really just your fear disguised as a defense mechanism. We want our partners to have influence over us because that's how we grow. You know how when you're helping someone do something and you can see things they're doing that they can't see? It's the same way in relationship. Sure, we might end up having judgments and annoyances about our partner. There's a lot of little small things that can happen, but there can be a lot of value in listening to what our partner sees and how they think and feel about how we operate in the world. Women tend to be more attuned to the emotional space. So if their request is in the field of relational development, emotional expression, communication, I'd really think hard about what your own stories are about her before you just sum it up to manipulation. I've been proven wrong many times in my relationship in this arena. And me realizing that, humbling myself, has allowed me to be good at the work that I do with couples and to be a better partner. So I realize there's a lot of nuance here. Sometimes we have to wait for the charge to come down, or we have to process some of our own stuff before we can do the honest assessment. If we're feeling manipulated, if it feels like a battle for control, but this can be worked through in most cases with more good faith, more skill, and more honesty with ourselves. So that's what I got for you today. If you want to look at men's group and coaching options, you can visit my website at www.bricebauer.com or www.jennymorrow.com, Morrow. Her website is prettier than mine. We're here if you want some help. I'll see you next week.